The Bell Witch haunting is one of the most infamous and talked about cases of paranormal activity in US history. For more than 200 years, the story has been passed down through books, witness accounts, newspaper reports, and local legend. A tale so strange, so unsettling, and so deeply rooted in American folklore that it still refuses to disappear. What began on a Tennessee farm in the early 1800s would become one of the only haunting cases in the nation's history to be tied not just to fear, but to death itself. Some believe it was a spirit, some say a curse, others insist there must be a rational explanation. But whatever was said to haunt the Bell family left behind a story that continues to disturb, fascinate, and divide all who hear it. This is the story of the Bell Witch. In the winter of 1820, a man lay dying in his bed in rural Tennessee. His family had gathered around him. They held his hands. They prayed. And in the corner of the room, something laughed. Not a person, not an animal, something they had no name for. Something that had tormented this family for 3 years, moving through their home like it owned it, whispering in the dark, singing in the walls, striking their father while they slept. And now, at the very end, it was here to watch him go. It began in the summer of 1817, and it began with a sound in the walls. Robertson County, Tennessee, 1817, a place of open fields and dense forest, of Baptist churches and tight-knit farming communities. Life here was hard but ordered. People knew their neighbors. They trusted God. And they believed, deeply, in the difference between the natural world and what lay beyond it. John Bell was by every account a respected man, a farmer, a landowner, a devoted member of the Red River Baptist Church. He had built a good life here, a large farm, a comfortable home, a family he was proud of. His wife Lucy was known throughout the community for her warmth and her faith. Together they had raised several children on that land. By all outward appearances, the Bell family had everything a family of that era could hope for. Nobody, not John Bell, not Lucy, not any of their children, could have imagined what was about to move into their home, what was about to take a particular, personal, unrelenting interest in their family, what would, in the end, destroy them. It started so small they almost missed it. The summer of 1817. John Bell begins to notice sounds, not dramatic, not unmistakable, just wrong enough to be unsettling. A knocking inside the walls, a scratching, like an animal trapped inside the timber. He investigates. He finds nothing. He attributes it to rats or raccoons or the natural settling of an old house in summer heat. But the sounds don't stop. They change. A few weeks in, it's no longer scratching, it's chains. The sound of heavy chains dragging slowly across the floor above their heads in the middle of the night. John gets up. He searches every room. Nothing. No chains. No source. Then something that sounds like a large dog clawing at the front door. He opens it. Nothing there. Not even footprints in the dirt. Then the children begin waking in the night, screaming that something is pulling their bed covers off them, that something is grabbing their hair, that there are sounds right beside their ears, a gulping, a lip smacking, like something breathing just inches from their faces in the dark. And then John Bell himself begins to suffer. A strange affliction, facial spasms he cannot control, his jaw locking, difficulty swallowing, his tongue swelling in his mouth for no reason any doctor of the era could explain. It will plague him for the rest of his life. For over a year, the Bell family endures this alone. They tell nobody. John Bell is a proud man, a respected man, and what is he going to say? That something invisible is tormenting his family, that chains drag themselves across empty floors. For 12 months they suffer in silence, until John Bell finally breaks down and tells his closest friend and neighbor, a man named James Johnston. James Johnston spends the night, and whatever he experiences inside that house, whatever speaks to him, whatever touches him in the dark, sends him out the next morning pale and shaken. He tells John Bell with absolute certainty, "Your house is haunted. Whatever is in there is real, and it is not friendly." Word spreads through the community. People begin visiting the Bell farm, first neighbors, then strangers from miles away, to witness whatever is inside that house. And the entity, as if encouraged by the attention, begins to evolve. The whispers grow stronger. Night by night, week by week, the voice gets clearer. At first it seems to be reciting Bible verses, hymns, fragments of scripture just below the threshold of hearing. Then one night it speaks plainly. Full sentences, full conversations, and the Bell family realizes they are sharing their home with something that thinks, something that has opinions, something with a personality, and a very specific hatred for the man of the house. The entity demonstrates impossible knowledge. It recounts private conversations that happened miles away, word for word, as if it had been there. It knows the contents of sermons before they're delivered. It knows when neighbors are sick before anyone has been told. Visitors test it, challenge it, try to expose it as a trick, and one by one leave convinced that what they've witnessed cannot be faked. Toward Lucy Bell, John's wife, the entity is almost tender. It brings her gifts, fruit and fresh nuts appearing from nowhere on her pillow. It sings her favorite hymns. It expresses concern for her health. On one occasion when Lucy falls ill, it goes silent for days, as if genuinely distressed. But toward John Bell, the entity is something else entirely. It curses him. It mocks him. It mimics him in a cruel, twisted voice. And it hits him. Witnesses report seeing John Bell's head snapped to the side by an invisible force, seeing him slapped, struck, his face going red with the imprint of a hand that wasn't there. Night after night, year after year, whatever is in that house is trying to break him. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows what John Bell did, if anything, to earn this level of hatred from something beyond the natural world. That question has never been answered. By 1819, the Bell Witch was famous. Word had traveled far beyond Robertson County, across Tennessee, across state lines, and among those who heard the stories and decided they needed to see for themselves was a man named Andrew Jackson, war hero, future 7th President of the United States, a man who had faced a British army, survived duels, and by his own account feared nothing on this earth. Jackson set out for the Bell farm with a group of companions, reportedly saying he was more curious about the Bell Witch than anything else in Tennessee. They loaded their wagon, made their way down the road toward the property, and then stopped, completely, without warning. The horses wouldn't move. The wheels were locked solid against a perfectly flat, clear road. The men got out and inspected. Nothing blocking the wheels, no mud, no ruts, no explanation. Jackson, according to accounts of the visit, looked at the road and then at the trees and said, "And these are the words attributed to him by the Eternal, it's the witch." And then, as suddenly as it had locked, the wagon moved freely again. The horses walked on as if nothing had happened. That night inside the Bell home, one of Jackson's companions, a man who had boasted loudly that he was a witch tamer, that he could expose the Bell Witch as a fraud, was reportedly singled out. The entity threw him across the room, pulled his hair, struck him repeatedly while his companions watched in helpless silence. The man left the next morning, all talk of witch taming gone. Andrew Jackson himself is reported to have said afterward that he would face the entire British Army again before spending another night in that house. The 7th President of the United States, one of the most formidable men of his era, was driven out by whatever lived in that Tennessee farmhouse. Through 1820, John Bell deteriorates. The facial spasms that began years earlier grow worse and more frequent. He loses weight. He struggles to eat, his throat swelling, his jaw locking for hours at a time. He becomes bedridden. His family watches helplessly as the strongest man they know shrinks before them. And through all of it, the entity continues, tormenting him in his sickbed, mocking his weakness, telling the family, with what witnesses describe as genuine satisfaction, that it will not stop until John Bell is dead. On the morning of December 20th, 1820, the family found John Bell unresponsive in his bed. He could not be woken, and near his body, sitting on the bedside table, was a small vial of dark liquid that nobody in the family recognized. Nobody knew where it came from. Nobody had put it there. His son Drew, not knowing what else to do, gave a small amount of the liquid to the family cat. The cat died almost immediately. The entity, when asked about the vial, allegedly told the family it had given John Bell the liquid the night before, that it had been administering it for some time, that it had finished what it came to do. John Bell died later that day, December 20th, 1820. He was buried on the farm he had built his life on, and at his funeral, while his family and neighbors stood around his grave in grief, the entity sang, loudly, clearly, without ceasing, a crude, mocking song while a good man was lowered into the earth. John Bell is the only person in documented American history said to have been killed by a paranormal entity. Whatever took his life that winter has never been identified. His death was never explained to the satisfaction of anyone who investigated it. After John Bell's death, the haunting subsided. The entity, whatever it was, seemed satisfied. It lingered for a short time, still interacting with the family, still kind to Lucy Bell. And then, in the spring of 1821, it told her it was leaving. It said it would return in 7 years. It did. In 1828, the entity returned to the Bell farm, visiting John Bell Jr. this time, not Lucy. It stayed for 2 weeks. It discussed philosophy, religion, the nature of the world. And then it left again. This time it told John Jr. it would return in 107 years. 1935 came and went. If the entity returned, no record of it survives. The Bell case was documented in remarkable detail. John Bell's son, Richard Williams. Bell wrote a first-hand account published in 1846, making it one of the earliest formally documented paranormal cases in American history. Newspapers covered it. Historians recorded testimony from dozens of witnesses across multiple decades. The case files are real. The witnesses were real. The death of John Bell was real. The Bell farm still stands in Adams, Tennessee. The town, population just a few hundred, has embraced its dark history. Every October, thousands of visitors come to walk the land where the Bell family suffered. Local guides will take you out to the cave on the property, a cave that locals have called the Bell Witch Cave for 200 years, a cave that people who visit still report strange experiences inside. But ask the people who actually live in Adams, Tennessee, the ones whose families have been there for generations, about the Bell Witch. Ask them if they go near the cave at night. Ask them about what their grandparents told them. The answers are always the same. They don't go near the woods after dark. They don't talk about it casually. And they don't doubt for a single second that something happened on that land. So what was the Bell Witch? 2 centuries of people have asked that question, and nobody has landed on an answer that satisfies everyone. Some historians point to a neighbor, a woman named Kate Batts, with whom John Bell had a bitter land dispute. The entity was sometimes called Kate. Some believe she orchestrated an elaborate, years-long campaign of psychological torment against the Bell family. But no explanation of how has ever been offered that accounts for everything that was witnessed. Psychologists have suggested mass hysteria, a deeply religious, isolated family under stress, projecting their fears outward into something external. Possible. But mass hysteria doesn't explain Andrew Jackson's wagon, doesn't explain the vial of liquid by the deathbed, doesn't explain the witnesses who came as skeptics and left as believers. Theologians of the era had their own answer. Demonologists have theirs. Paranormal researchers still visit Adams, Tennessee every year, looking for evidence that will settle the question once and for all. None have found it. What we know is this: a family suffered, a man died, hundreds of people witnessed things they could not explain. A future president of the United States left shaken and refused to speak about what he saw in detail for the rest of his life. And the land in Adams, Tennessee has been considered haunted by the people who live closest to it for over 200 years without interruption. The Bell Witch doesn't need you to believe in it. It was there long before you were. And if the old promise holds, it'll be there long after. The Bell Farm still stands. The cave is still open. And if you ever find yourself in Adams, Tennessee, standing at the edge of those woods as the sun goes down, and you hear something moving in the trees behind you, now you'll know what it is.